Hey cat lovers, welcome back to Cat Rules. Before you watch this video, I want you to think about the last time your cat disappeared outside for a few hours. Maybe it was this morning. You opened the door, they trotted off the porch, and then nothing. No sightings, no sounds, just an empty yard. And a few hours later, they walked back through that same door like nothing happened. Have you ever actually wondered where they went? Because for most of history, nobody knew. Not really. You might catch a glimpse of your cat sitting on a neighbor's wall or slipping under a parked car 3 houses down. But everything that happened between those sightings was a total mystery. Your cat could have crossed the whole neighborhood. It could have hunted, fought, hidden, or wandered for miles. You simply had no way to know. That changed once scientists figured out how to strap tiny GPS trackers onto cat collars. And once researchers actually mapped where hundreds of pet cats go when they vanish through the cat flap, the results were not even close to what anyone expected. In this video, we're going deep into what the science actually shows about outdoor cats, how far they really travel, what they're doing during those missing hours, why they always seem to know exactly how to find their way home, and what real risks they're facing out there that most owners never see. Stick around until the end, because the last part covers something every outdoor cat owner needs to know about keeping their cats safer without locking them inside forever. If you love this kind of deep dive into the secret life of cats, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. Let's start with the biggest study ever done on this question. In 2020, researchers from North Carolina State University ran something called the Cat Tracker Project. They recruited ordinary pet owners in 6 countries, mostly the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, and fitted 925 pet cats with small GPS units. These devices recorded the cat's location every few minutes for about a week, while the cats did whatever cats normally do. Hundreds of thousands of location points came back, and when researchers plotted all those dots on a map for each cat, a very clear, very consistent shape appeared. Most cats stayed remarkably close to home. The average home range, meaning the total area a cat regularly used for roaming, resting, and hunting, was about 3.6 hectares. Now, a hectare is a square measuring 100 meters on each side, so 3.6 hectares works out to roughly the size of 5 soccer fields put together. That might sound like a decent chunk of land, but compare it to a truly wild predator, and it's nothing. Out of all 925 cats in the study, only 3 of them ranged over 1 square kilometer. Just 3. One British cat walked about 1.7 kilometers down a road connecting 2 villages, and 2 New Zealand cats covered unusually large areas through farmland and open country. Everyone else stayed close. Most cats spent nearly all of their outdoor time within about 100 meters of their own front door. Here's the part that really surprised the researchers, though. A small home range does not mean a lazy cat. It means a cat that is walking the same ground over and over again. Picture your cat circling the same shed, retracing the same fence line, crossing the same lawn 5 separate times in one afternoon. That's not wasted movement. That's a cat building a long, complicated journey out of short, repeated loops through a space it knows intimately. Which brings us to something researchers call the core area. This is the small pocket inside the larger home range that gets the heaviest use, the spot where the GPS dots pile up on top of each other, a favorite sunny wall, a sheltered gap under a hedge, the shady side of a shed roof. A study in southern Norway tracked 92 owned cats for an average of 21 days each and measured this precisely. The average home range came out to 2.6 hectares, but the average core area, the part that actually saw the most action, was only 0.2 hectares, roughly the size of a few gardens pushed together. That's about 1/14 the size of the full home range. In other words, your cat has an enormous invisible map of the neighborhood in its head, but it's really only living hard in one small corner of it. That same Norwegian study found something a lot of owners will recognize instantly if they have both a male and a female cat. Male cats used average ranges of 3.7 hectares. Female cats averaged 1.5 hectares, less than half, and this pattern shows up again and again in tracking studies. It's not universal. Some individual females roam farther than the neighborhood males, but on average, unneutered males in particular tend to cover more ground because they're often searching for mates, not just food or fun. And then there's the number that really stuck with researchers. On average, the tracked cats spent 79% of their outdoor time within 50 meters of their own house. 50 meters. That's a distance you could walk in under a minute. Your cat can disappear for 3 hours and spend the overwhelming majority of that time closer to your porch than your mailbox is to your neighbor's driveway. The average outdoor GPS position across the whole study was just 58 meters from home. So next time your cat vanishes for an entire afternoon, know this: statistically, they were probably never more than a few gardens away the whole time. Now here's a detail that trips a lot of people up. A small range does not mean a short walk. Researchers separate two different measurements. Home range size tells you how much ground a cat uses. Distance traveled tells you how far it actually walked that day. And a cat can rack up a surprising number of kilometers without ever leaving a tiny patch of the neighborhood, simply by looping the same fence, backtracking along the same path, and repeating parts of its route again and again. A Danish study that tracked 97 companion cats for about a week found that the median cat spent roughly 5 hours outside per day and walked around 2.4 kilometers daily, but there was huge variation. The middle half of all the cats in that study walked somewhere between 1.3 and 3.7 kilometers a day. So one cat might do a couple of relaxed laps of the garden, while another one, using the exact same size of territory, is putting in almost 3 times the distance every single day. Age changed this pattern in a predictable way. Cats older than 7 generally spent less time outside, walked shorter distances, and used smaller ranges than younger cats. That tracks with what most of us already notice. An older cat with plenty of outdoor experience tends to settle into a smaller, calmer routine. Possibly because of stiffer joints. Possibly because years of experience mean fewer pointless exploratory trips. Reproductive status made an even bigger difference. Intact males, meaning males that had not been neutered, spent noticeably more time away from home and covered larger ranges than neutered males. That's mate searching at work, the scent of a receptive female pulling a cat well beyond its usual comfort zone. And the surrounding landscape mattered too. Cats living near fields or semi-natural land traveled farther than cats boxed in by walls, fences, and busy streets. Access to open space doesn't guarantee a cat will use it, but it definitely gives them the option. Weather changes the map almost daily. In that same Danish tracking study, cats walked an average of about 3.6 kilometers on dry days. During heavy rain, that number dropped to roughly 2.4 kilometers, close to a third less distance. That doesn't mean every cat huddles indoors the second a cloud rolls in. Some kept moving through sheltered paths. But rain dilutes scent trails on fences and posts, softens the ground, makes familiar surfaces slippery, and a soaked coat loses its insulating power fast, so a cat's whole cost-benefit calculation about whether a trip outside is worth it shifts. Heat does something similar in the opposite direction, pushing activity toward the cooler hours of early morning and evening, while cold weather increases the energy cost of every trip outdoors. Your cat isn't being moody when it refuses to go out in a downpour. It's making a completely rational weather forecast based on millions of years of instinct. There's also a question of exactly what kind of ground your cat is choosing to walk on, and this is where a study from southwestern Ontario gets interesting. Researchers there fitted breakaway collars carrying both a GPS unit and a small camera onto cats around several connected towns, and ended up with more than 41,000 usable location points. When they compared those points against detailed land maps, 73% of the recorded locations fell on what researchers call impervious surfaces. meaning driveways, patios, roofs, decks, and other built structures that water can't soak through. Only 22% were on roads, and just 4% landed in actual green space. Cats, it turns out, are not particularly drawn to open grass and wild corners. They gravitate toward the human-built landscape itself, likely because that's exactly where the good stuff is concentrated. Warm surfaces, hiding spots under decks, food from pet bowls, compost and bird feeders, and rodents that are themselves drawn to buildings. A completely different study using far more precise habitat mapping in a Mediterranean setting, tracking 49 neutered cats, found that living near natural or semi-natural, open land did let cats range somewhat farther, but no single type of land cover consistently attracted more use than expected. The picture that emerges is that a cat isn't chasing wilderness. It's chasing opportunity, and opportunity in most neighborhoods looks a lot more like your patio than like a forest. And if you want real proof of how much the surrounding landscape controls the size of a cat's world, look at what happens when you take a cat off a suburban street and put it on a farm. Researchers in Portugal fitted radio collars on 8 cats living around agricultural land and tracked them for an average of about 10 months, far longer than the usual week-long suburban studies. Every one of these cats still centered its life on the farm buildings. That's where the food and shelter were. But the sheer scale of their movement was staggering by comparison. Their average maximum distance from the farm was about 2.9 kilometers, and one cat's longest recorded trip reached 6.3 kilometers. Male ranges in that small group averaged around 430 hectares, and female ranges averaged 87 hectares. Compare that to the 2 to 3 hectares typical of a suburban house cat, and you start to understand just how much walls, fences, roads, and closely packed neighbors compress a cat's natural instincts. Give a cat open land and no barriers, and the same species that spends 79% of its time within 50 meters of a suburban porch will happily walk for kilometers. It's never really been about how far a cat is capable of going. It's about how much room the world around it actually allows. Okay, so we know cats mostly stay close, mostly retrace the same ground, and adjust their travel based on weather. But how does a cat, with no map, no compass, and definitely no phone, always seem to know exactly how to turn back toward home after wandering through 3 different gardens? This is one of the most fascinating parts of the research. Scientists believe cats rely on a combination of several overlapping systems, not one single trick. The first is spatial memory. Laboratory tests have shown that cats can remember the location of places they recently visited, including where food was hidden. Out in the real world, that memory scales up into a mental sequence of landmarks. Turn beside this wall, pass through this gap, follow this hedge, cross this garden. The second system is something called path integration, where an animal keeps a rough running estimate of the direction back to its starting point, based purely on its own movements, how far it walked, which way it turned, how fast it went. This has been studied clearly in desert ants, which travel long, twisting routes away from their nest and then return by a nearly straight line. Cats may use a version of this over short trips too, though it hasn't been proven as a complete explanation on its own. On top of all that, a cat is constantly gathering sensory clues along the way. A familiar rooftop confirms a direction. Traffic noise from one side tells it where the road is. The smell of home itself becomes stronger and stronger the closer it gets. No single clue has to carry the whole journey. They all stack together. There's also a whole invisible layer of communication happening at ankle height that most owners never notice. Every fence post, tree trunk, and garden corner in your cat's territory is basically a bulletin board. Cats deposit scent through cheek rubbing, which releases material from glands around the face. They deposit it through scratching, which leaves both a visual mark and a chemical one. And they deposit it through urine spraying, usually performed standing with the tail raised, aimed backward onto something vertical like a fence post or wall, high enough that another cat's nose finds it easily. One researcher who studied semi-feral cats found that adult males did the vast majority of the spraying, and that scratched trees tended to sit along paths the cats were already using rather than forming any kind of neat, defensive ring around the edge of their territory. So this isn't really a wall keeping other cats out. It's more like a shared local newspaper letting every cat that passes through know who else has been by recently and roughly how long ago. And here's the thing that might genuinely surprise you if you've ever worried about your cat running into a rival in the neighborhood. When researchers layer multiple cats' GPS tracks onto the same map, a picture called a catscape, the ranges overlap constantly. Your cat's territory is not exclusively yours. It's shared quietly with several neighborhood cats, and most of the time, they barely see each other at all. How? Timing. Cats divide up the same physical space by using it at different hours. One cat crosses a shared garden right after breakfast. A neighboring cat uses the exact same patch of grass in the afternoon while the first one is asleep indoors. A third comes through after dark. Researchers call this temporal separation, and it's incredibly effective at avoiding conflict. A fresh scent mark tells a cat that someone recently passed through, so it can adjust its own timing without ever needing a face-to-face standoff. When cats do cross paths directly, the encounter usually starts quiet, freezing, watching, turning sideways instead of facing head-on, which is actually a way of lowering tension rather than raising it. One cat waits, the other decides to move off, and the moment passes without a single sound. Only when neither cat backs down does it escalate, first to growling and hissing, then possibly a short chase, and true physical fighting is actually pretty rare because it's costly and risky for both sides. So next time you're picturing your cat's daily territory as some fiercely defended fortress, picture it more like a very polite, extremely well-scheduled shared parking lot instead. Now let's talk about the part of this that probably gets asked about the most. What is your cat actually doing during those hours outside? Is it really hunting the whole time? The most detailed answer to that question came from a landmark study out of the University of Georgia. Between 2010 and 2011, researchers strapped tiny video cameras, nicknamed kitty cams, onto 55 owned free-roaming cats in suburban Athens, Georgia, and let them go about their normal outdoor lives for about a week each. That produced more than 2,000 hours of footage. And this is where GPS data alone falls short, because a cluster of location points beside a hedge can't tell you whether your cat was hunting, sleeping, or just people watching. A camera can. Here's what they found. 44% of the cats displayed some kind of hunting behavior during their observed week, meaning they oriented toward, stalked, chased, or attempted to pounce on something. But only 30% actually succeeded in capturing prey. That gap matters a lot. A huge share of hunting attempts simply fail. The prey escapes, disappears under cover, or gets away before contact. And plenty of cats showed no hunting behavior at all that week. Outdoor access clearly does not turn every single cat into a constant predator. Among the cats that did succeed, the average was about 2.4 captures over that week. What were they actually catching? In Georgia specifically, it turned out to be mostly small lizards, called Carolina anoles, along with small mammals like voles, and various insects. Birds, interestingly, made up the minority of captures in this particular study, even though several cats spent long stretches sitting under bird feeders, apparently just watching. Local wildlife availability drives what shows up in the capture list, so a colder climate study would likely show more rodents and fewer reptiles. And here's the detail that reshapes how most people think about the whole prey question. Only 23% of everything the cats successfully caught was ever carried home. 49% was simply left at or near the spot where it was captured. And the remaining 28% was eaten right there outdoors. So that mouse or lizard your cat proudly drops on your kitchen floor represents less than a quarter of what actually happens out there. The rest, researchers only found out about because of the cameras. This matters because most older research on cat hunting relied entirely on owners counting what got brought home, which massively underestimates true hunting activity. Scientists call this a detection problem. The events that are easy to notice, like a dead mouse on the doormat, get counted, while everything that happens quietly under a hedge 3 gardens away simply vanishes from the data. If you zoom out from any one cat and look at an entire residential block using that catscape idea from earlier, the picture shifts again. The original Cat Tracker project found that 75% of tracked cats spent their outdoor time in areas that were at least 90% human-altered, meaning residential streets, gardens, and buildings rather than wild habitat. That might sound reassuring for wildlife, but researchers point out it actually concentrates the effect. Because each cat's hunting pressure is packed into such a tiny, compact range, the number of prey animals taken per hectare each year can end up dramatically higher than what a wild predator with a huge natural territory produces in the same area. The researchers behind that project estimated house cats can have somewhere between 2 and 10 times the local ecological impact of a similarly sized wild predator, purely because their entire hunting effort is squeezed into such a small, resource-rich patch of land. It's not that any individual cat is unusually deadly, it's that dozens of small, overlapping ranges stacked across a neighborhood add up fast. All right, let's shift to something every single outdoor cat owner needs to hear, because this is the part where the cute mystery of where your cat goes turns into something more serious. That same Georgia camera study tracked risky behaviors, not just hunting, and the numbers are worth sitting with for a second. 85% of the cats in the study demonstrated at least one risky behavior during their observation week. 45% crossed at least one road. One single cat crossed roads 24 separate times while wearing the camera. 25% encountered an unfamiliar cat. The same proportion, 25%, ate or drank something away from home, meaning food or water, of completely unknown origin. 20% entered storm drains. Another 20% climbed into crawl spaces underneath houses. And it wasn't evenly spread across every cat either. Some stuck to quiet, familiar gardens and barely registered a single risky moment. Others repeatedly used roads or squeezed into confined structures again and again. Male cats showed more risky behavior overall than females, and younger cats showed more than older ones, which lines up with everything else we've covered about range size and confidence. A cat is built for short, explosive bursts of speed, incredible for escaping a rival or a dog, but genuinely useless against a car that can appear from beyond its field of attention and cover the distance in a couple of seconds. Roads are a modern hazard that evolution simply never prepared any cat for. The outdoor world hides other dangers too, ones that don't announce themselves the moment your cat walks back through the door. Antifreeze, for example, contains a compound called ethylene glycol that has a sweet taste cats can find appealing, and it can cause severe poisoning in extremely small amounts. Rodent poisons can be picked up directly or through a poisoned prey animal. Open garages might hide sharp tools, machinery, or spilled chemicals. And then there's the invisible biological side of things. A large global review published just recently pooled data from more than 174,000 cats across 88 countries and found something pretty striking. Cats with outdoor access had roughly 3 times the odds of testing positive for a pathogen compared to strictly indoor cats. About 18% of outdoor pet cats tested positive for at least one pathogen, compared to around 8% of indoor-only cats. And here's the part that really got researchers' attention. The infection risk for roaming pet cats was statistically close to the infection risk of feral cats living with no owner at all. In other words, once a cat starts roaming and hunting, a warm bed and regular meals at home only offer so much protection. This is exactly the kind of moment where a little bit of preparation goes a long way, because outdoor life means your cat is going to occasionally come home with a scrape, a limp, a strange bite mark, or something that just doesn't look right. And knowing how to react in that first hour can genuinely make a difference. If your cat is a senior or has any kind of mobility limitation, this becomes even more important, because their bodies simply don't bounce back from an outdoor mishap the way a young, healthy cat's does. That's actually the whole reason we put together our guide, Emergency First Aid for Senior and Disabled Indoor Cats. It walks you step by step through exactly what to do in those first critical minutes after an injury, before you can get to a vet, so you're not standing in your kitchen panicking and Googling with shaking hands. It's a paid guide, but it's the kind of thing you read once calmly ahead of time and then hope you never need. Link is down in the description if you want to check it out. So does all of this mean you should just lock your cat inside forever and call it a day? Not necessarily. And this is actually where the research gets genuinely useful, because scientists have started testing what actually works to reduce the risks of outdoor access without eliminating outdoor life completely. A major trial run by the University of Exeter, published in the journal Current Biology, followed 355 hunting cats across 219 households in southwest England for 12 weeks and tested several interventions side by side against a control group. The results were not what most people would have guessed. Households that switched their cat to a premium, high-meat protein food saw the number of prey animals brought home drop by 36%. Households that added just 5 to 10 minutes of daily object play, meaning proper hands-on play with a wand toy or something the cat could chase, catch, and carry, saw a 25% reduction. Colorful collar covers sold under the name Birds Be Safe, which make a cat more visible to birds specifically, cut the number of birds brought home by 42%. Though they made no measurable difference for mammal prey, since birds rely heavily on color vision while mice and voles don't. Plain old bells showed no reliable overall effect. Some individual cats seem to learn to hunt successfully despite wearing one. And here's the genuinely surprising result. Puzzle feeders, which are usually recommended as enrichment, actually increased the number of prey animals brought home by 33% in this study. Researchers aren't fully sure why, though they suspect it might be linked to frustration or some change in the cat's overall feeding motivation. It's a great reminder that even a reasonable-sounding idea needs to be tested directly rather than assumed. Beyond diet and play, the tracking research also points towards some very practical, non-invasive ways to shape a cat's outdoor life. Daylight-only access lets a cat enjoy the outdoors while drivers can see it, and while nocturnal prey animals get more of a break. A nighttime curfew does something similar in reverse, keeping a cat in before traffic and hunting opportunities pick up after dark. A catio, a screen structure attached to a window or door, gives a cat fresh air, sunlight, scent, and sound without any actual roaming risk at all. And harness walking can work for some cats, although it usually takes real patience and gradual training before a cat accepts the feel of a harness and lead. None of these require giving up on outdoor time completely. They're about shaping when and how much of it happens. So let's bring this all together because we covered a lot of ground, pun fully intended. Here's what the actual tracking science tells us about where your cat goes when they slip through that door. Most cats stick surprisingly close to home, with an average home range of around 3.5 hectares, and the overwhelming majority of that time, close to 80% of it, is spent within just 50 meters of your front door. Inside that range sits a much smaller core area, the handful of favorite spots your cat returns to again and again. Male cats and unneutered cats tend to roam farther than females, and neutered cats. Younger cats travel more than seniors, and weather like heavy rain can cut a cat's daily distance by roughly a third. Cats find their way home using a blend of memory, self-motion tracking, and sensory clues like scent and sound, not any single magic sense. And the scent marks they leave on fences and posts function less like a defended border and more like a shared community bulletin board that lets neighboring cats avoid each other through careful timing rather than conflict. When it comes to hunting, less than half of outdoor cats show any hunting behavior in a given week, and less than a third actually succeed. And what they bring home to your doorstep is only a small fraction, around a quarter, of what they actually catch. The real risks worth paying attention to are roads, unfamiliar animals, hidden hazards like antifreeze and poisons, and a meaningfully higher chance of picking up a pathogen compared to a strictly indoor cat. And the good news is that some of the simplest changes you can make, more play, better food, thoughtful timing of outdoor access, have been shown in real controlled research to make a genuine difference. Your cat's daily disappearing act isn't some unknowable mystery anymore. It's a small, structured, repeated journey through a map they know better than you do, built on memory, scent, timing, and instinct that's been shaping their species for thousands of years. What's the farthest you've ever actually seen your cat roam? Let us know in the comments. I would love to hear it. And if this kind of deep dive into the science behind everyday cat behavior is your thing, subscribe, because we've got a lot more of these coming. Thanks for watching, cat lovers, and we'll see you in the next one.